Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over 5 stocks and cryptos or positions that we are buying or are getting ready to position ourselves in. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so let's talk about position number 1. So we did not go over this in the previous videos, although we did tell you guys about this on X. So you guys can see that we have a position currently in NVDA. So obviously position number 1 would be NVIDIA. That we just got into this one. Okay. So we didn't get 100 shares in order to write options. That's because we want to have some cash and liquidity on the side for multiple reasons. We always do this. We've told you guys this before. So you guys can see we have 25 shares here. The total cost basis is roughly, well, you can see roughly about what it is here. So it's roughly about 3K. I'll tell you guys right now, I'm expecting NVIDIA between now and probably a week after earnings, maybe 2 weeks after earnings, to be up probably somewhere around 30 to 40% from the current price. And I'm actually going to show you guys why that is right now. So we'll go over to the NVIDIA chart. Okay, weekly time frame is kind of a bit much here. The thing I do want to point out about the weekly time frame is we did get a break above this trend line here. Pretty much all of the major news catalysts are out of the way, I think, except for retail sales. I don't remember what day that comes out. But I can't imagine at this point that the market's really going to reverse to the downside. I just don't see that happening, especially with this insane crash. So the NASDAQ itself went down, I think a maximum of 17% in the drawdown. NVIDIA was 35%, which was actually, let's see. Yeah, it was actually even bigger than the last correction we had. So in my opinion, I think NVIDIA is set up nicely to go up in the coming weeks. So there's a few things here, okay? So it's not just that. There is some other things I want to point out here. So we have a golden cross on the MACD. We hit oversold or pretty close to oversold on the RSI. Usually when we get a golden cross on the MACD, that's a pretty strong indicator the price is already going up, or it's going to go up further, or it's literally on the cusp of going up. As you guys can see, it lines up almost perfectly with this kind of pullback before a massive rip. If I go back even further here, kind of got to zoom out a little bit more to really see this. So we had another one here, okay? It's actually quite difficult to see, but zoom out a little bit more. So it wasn't quite a golden cross, okay? But there's usually one of two ways that we play this, okay? We either get in for a swing trade. Okay, again, this NVIDIA position is a swing trade. It's nothing more than that at this point. It could be a long-term hold, but we want to get some more capital built up first before we start really accumulating the Mag 7 themselves, because they're quite expensive. So NVIDIA, you can see that we have the golden cross here. So we play this one of two ways, okay? We either get in at the golden cross, or if the price is too far gone above the cross, that happens itself, like you can see here, we'll wait for a pullback. Okay, we wait for some kind of pullback. Usually we'll either get in at the pullback, or we'll wait for a break of a downtrend line of some kind, or a flat top, like you guys can kind of see right here as an example, to get in, and then we'll get in at that point and we'll just let it ride. You can see the MACD death cross, or sorry, yeah, that is actually a death cross, but the the golden cross here happened at kind of the peak of this pullback. Again, the pullback was relatively small. It wasn't that big. And then boom, took off like a rocket ship. So the oversold RSI is one indicator. The fact that we bounced off support is another indicator. And we got a break of this downtrend line, as you guys can see every time that's happened. In recent times, there's also been another big breakout. So we're seeing all of those things converge kind of all at the same time. Multiple bullish indicators setting off. Oversold RSI, bull cross on the RSI, bull cross on the MACD, bull cross on the not on the daily. Sorry, it didn't actually happen on the daily, so I'm on the wrong time frame here. So bull cross on the 4-hourly time frame. Again, I can just go back and measure with you guys these golden crosses to kind of give you an example of just how much they go up. Okay. It's very difficult to measure, to know exactly what the measured move is going to be. You guys can see this last one here was only 9%. But of course, we've had a major pullback since then. Usually that's the best time for it to get in on a golden cross after a large pullback. This time so far, only 9%. But because of the fact that we had a huge pullback, it tells me likely there is going to be more upside. And this golden cross back here, you can see the move was absolutely huge. So 70%. And then even before that, just to show you guys how rare these golden crosses are. So I listed off 3 in total. So this one right back here in January of 2024, which was literally only the 4th time I've seen this on the 4-hourly chart on NVIDIA for the whole year. This thing went up nearly 100% from that point. So anything from 10% to 100%. Again, the deeper the pullback, generally speaking, the larger the move to the upside. So that's kind of what we're looking for NVIDIA. Plus, the other thing is we have earnings coming up. I've told you this before on the charts. So usually what NVIDIA will do is we'll kind of have a move up. So people will buy into the earnings, and then usually, well, in this case, you can see there was a pullback after the earnings, but generally speaking, it did go up after earnings. Okay, so bought into the earnings, got a pullback into the earnings, and then boom, took off. Bought into the earnings. There was actually a gap up after this earnings, so it just basically went straight up, and then we pulled back right before earnings, like we kind of saw right here. And then we get the breakout of the trend line, the golden cross on the EMAs. Of course, these were both oversold on the RSI. And then what happens before earnings? We go up, and then earnings happens, and theoretically, it should skyrocket after that. I'm not expecting NVIDIA to miss earnings. It doesn't matter what's going on with the economy. It's NVIDIA, guys. It's the king of the AI stocks, okay? This thing likely is still going to smash earnings massively in terms of bullishness. So second position that we're looking at here is TMF. We've only bought a little bit of this, but we do intend to buy more in the coming days. It's quite simple. So I'm going to go over here to the weekly time frame on TMF. Okay. So this is going to take me a little bit to pull up. Give me a second here. And for this one, I'm going to go over to the Fed funds rate. As you guys know, the Fed is pretty much locked and ready to go to start cutting rates next month. There's a reason why I'm talking about this one right now, so I'm going to show you guys here in a minute. Okay, this is not exactly the chart that I wanted to see, but regardless, it doesn't matter. So we'll pull up the monthly for TMF as well. So basically, pretty much what TMF, TLT, and TLTW are they're pretty much inverse ETFs that inverse the Fed funds rate. Okay, so when the Fed funds rate goes up, generally speaking, TMF, TLT, and TLTW will go down. As you guys can see, we got this little pop on the Fed funds rate here before it ended up going up massively. It wasn't immediately evident on TMF, but you guys can see as the rate goes up, TMF is going down over there on the left until what happens? The Fed funds rate tops out. And basically, when the Fed stops raising rates, when they halt, and then when they start cutting, that's generally speaking when TMF moonshots. And then same thing here. Fed funds rate at the bottom, they get ready to hike. What happens? TMF goes down. And then theoretically, the same thing should repeat when they cut this time. They'll cut, and then basically the Fed funds rate will go down, TMF will go up. So that's kind of what we're looking for here. In my opinion, I think it's, again, this is not financial advice, but I do think it's pretty much more or less the perfect play here. So we have a very small amount, but we do intend to buy a lot more than just 0.41 shares. And this is going to be a play that's going to last for probably months. This is not really going to be looking like a short-term play unless the Fed funds rate basically leads to no recession, which in my opinion, the cutting is not going to cause a recession. But regardless, irrespective of that, this is basically an inverse the Fed move. So Fed cuts rates. We want to be in this because, again, bond prices will go up as the Fed cuts rates because bond yields have an inverse correlation. Okay, when the Fed raises rates, bond yields go up. People get spooked out of the markets. They leave the markets, go sit in bonds with their 5% yields and cash equivalents, high yield savings, stuff like that. When the Fed cuts rates, the bond yields come down and the prices of bonds go up. And that's what TMF is essentially. It's basically a bond fund that, once again, the price should go up when the Fed cuts rates. So the next one we're looking at is GPIQ. So GIPQ, we have not bought this yet, but we are certainly lining up to get ready to buy this. Okay, so GPIQ, there's a couple of reasons why we chose this one. Okay. The first reason is because you guys can see the performance of this thing has been absolutely stellar since it came out. Again, it basically did, if we go back to, let me actually go over here to the NASDAQ. Give me just a second, guys. So we're going over here to the, oops. Okay. Yeah, sorry, my bad, y'all. Hold on one second. So I'm actually going to pull up the futures chart for this. I don't think it really matters, honestly. Futures pretty much is just an indexed version of the stock market. It's like an index fund mirroring the stock market. So the stock market would be the actual index, and the index fund would be like futures. So you guys can see, where is it? So October 2023, the NASDAQ bottomed out, right? That's pretty much about the time that this fund came out. What happened? This thing absolutely shredded to the upside. Just from that bottom move there, it moved up roughly about 21%. So it went from 38 to 46. That's an absolutely massive move. So we got the pullback here in April 2024. Again, that was the most recent pullback that we had. And then what did it do? It ripped up again. It basically went from 43 to 49, hit new all-time highs. The thing I want to point out about this is that this thing does pay some pretty juicy dividends, but the price, generally speaking, recovers pretty quickly on a pullback. So in my opinion, that's good for a long-term hold, okay? At least as far as we've seen in terms of corrections. Now, a bear market could be a different story, but if this thing can recover that nicely in a correction, it could probably do so as well in a bear market, would be my guess. So the point here is massive price appreciation in addition to a nice, juicy, stable dividend. So you guys can see this thing is paying nearly $5 a year, which again is not a huge yield. It's only roughly about 10, 11%, but it comes with a lot of price appreciation. So when you combined, let's say the current dividend yield, roughly about 40 cents a month, combined with the basically the roughly about, we'll call it a 1-year return, since this fund did come out roughly in October and it's now August, not quite a year, but pretty close. Well, 18% plus 10% or 11%, that's roughly about 30% over the course of 1 year. That's a great return, okay? So next one is basically the brother or sister fund, however you want to call it, which is GPIQ or GPIX in this case. I guess GPIQ would be the NASDAQ version. So pretty similar story here, okay? Since inception, from the inception all the way up to the peak, this thing went up 23%. As of the inception, this thing is still currently up a massive 19%. If I were to compare that to something like, let's say, QDTE, and again, we love getting a mix of both dividends and total return. QDTE, in my opinion, is a great fund, but as you guys can see, and of course, this is also based on the timing of the launch of the fund. Unfortunately, the fund is still down a little bit. It is recovering, which is nice. It's recovered quite a bit since the lows, but you can see the stellar difference between GPIQ, GPIX, and something like QDTE and XDTE. Granted, the yields for this one is for the XDTE and QDTE are much higher, so that's something to keep in mind. Once again, March 2024, that was the time that it was released was actually right before this pullback. So you guys can see that here on the chart. So we got the pullback, and then ultimately this thing did actually end up recovering all of the price that it lost. Okay, so that's a plus. But again, the vast majority of this fund gets the vast majority of the total return of QDTE and XDTE on appearance does appear to be getting paid out in terms of dividends. With GPIQ, GPIX, we're getting a combination of the actual price appreciation plus the dividend payout. So now I'm going to go ahead and type in GPIX here. So we'll go GPIX dividend. And it's not quite as high as the NASDAQ, but again, the S&P is not as volatile as the NASDAQ. As you guys know, options premiums are the amount that's paid out is based on the level of volatility, whether it's a little bit or a lot determines how much is paid. Still 8.66% combined with, we go back here to GPIX. Whoops. Okay, not one day, max time frame. So 8.66% combined with 19%. That's pretty good. It's 27% return. Basically, the last 10 to 12 months. That's really good. All right. So last position here is going to be Filecoin. We've talked about this one ad nauseum. This is a DPIN/AI project. It's also a top 50 crypto. It's remained a top 50 crypto throughout the bear market. Generally speaking, the top 50 cryptos do perform pretty well in the subsequent bull run. That usually happens. So in terms of the position sizing that we have with this, we have roughly about 4K currently in this. Average price roughly about $7.40 per Filecoin, but you guys can see we've basically been picking this thing up every day. So August 13th, August 14th, August 12th. And if I go over to the Filecoin chart here on TradingView, I can show you guys this right now. So it's roughly cut in half from our average cost basis. But again, we're just slowly DCAing down. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, because we're pretty much at those bear market lows, that macro support. Again, generally speaking, when you get some kind of sideways price action like this, if I draw this white line here, you can see it was previous support, now kind of holding down as resistance here in between the support and this white line. When you see a lot of sideways like that, at the lower end of the price scale, that usually indicates accumulation. Okay, usually that's what that means. If I go back in time on a coin like, let's say, Dogecoin, I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. It's much more obvious on this chart. Okay, and again, this was the previous cycle. There was QE back then. We're in QT now. It's but I mean, regardless, it's essentially the same thing. Okay. So you kind of see that we are just bobbing around back here in 2020, right around the bear market lows. Okay. Not exactly perfectly, but more or less right around those lows. Okay. Just kind of chopping sideways, not doing much of anything right around the bear market lows. And then what happens shortly after the election and the inauguration of the future president? Again, the bull run does usually start right around the elections. Boom. Dogecoin pops off like an absolute monster, goes from 1/10 of a penny all the way up to 76 cents. So we're seeing Filecoin as a very, very similar thing. I can actually show you guys the previous bull run to prove to you that this is not a coincidence. Okay. So Filecoin tops out here in 2017 bull run, has its bear market. What does it do? Finds its low during the bear market and it just chops sideways. That's all it does. And then eventually, when the timing is right, boom, pops off and rips like an absolute monster to the upside. Keep in mind, we did have the pandemic and the massive money printing and all that, but I'm not expecting this to be any different this time around. Again, the Fed theoretically should be cutting rates before the end of the year, which is going to want to make that $6 trillion in money market funds move out of those savings account because they're not going to be paying as much and bonds and move into something else that's going to pay more, like stocks and crypto. People want to put their money where it can make money. Makes sense, right? So we kind of chopped towards the bear market lows, and then boom, eventually we ended up having this huge, massive move up here to 127, and then an even bigger move all the way up to 236. Now, how high exactly Filecoin is going to go during this bull run, I don't know. But we're seeing a very similar setup to basically the previous bear market into eventually the bull run, finds its lows, kind of just chops around sideways, and then boom, pops off to the upside. I'll tell you guys this, okay? If Filecoin goes to $150, which again is, I mean, that's a pretty high price, but it's not like extraordinary, okay, like what Dogecoin did, I mean, it's still going to be a pretty solid return. Okay. And we're just slowly adding to it. We don't know what the performance of Filecoin is going to be. It could go to $50. It could go to $500. It could go nowhere, although I highly doubt that's going to happen. But as you guys can see, $150 would not even be close to the peak. So $150 is all the way down here, kind of at towards this big fat red candle right here. But of course, Filecoin could also do something like Dogecoin did, or even Horizon, and surpass previous all-time highs. Well, we can't see it here, but basically, if I were to go to, let's say, a different chart, like this one, for example, something like this could happen where it basically does end up surpassing all-time highs. I believe if I actually go back to the Filecoin chart, you guys can actually see that that's exactly what happened. So although this was a new project back in 2017, you can see we had a peak, and then we had an even bigger peak the following cycle. I'm not saying it's going to go higher than 240, but just understand that generally speaking, when you have a coin that goes to a higher peak the following cycle, that's usually a pretty good pick for a lot of crypto investors, because they're looking at this thing thinking like, okay, this thing just keeps making new peaks like Ethereum and Bitcoin. Maybe we should buy some because it might just go even higher the next bull run. So again, it kind of comes back to investor and trader psychology. Anyways, these are the 5 positions that we're currently buying or looking to get into buying. Hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.